Well, hello and welcome to the stream. Let's go ahead and see what we can get into. We're going to do a little bit of some Bell, and this is starting on December 18th, 1997. Space picking off. Part two.
Must be answered as time goes on. And let's look at a couple more. These are some of the Mars conferences. There's the classic reversal, of course, that caused a lot of commotion at the Richard Hoagland conference in Pasadena, where the infamous man in black incident occurred.
All right, go right ahead.
Then set even greater land distance rover records on Mars by going a full 6 meters in autonomous fashion, as will be described later, over this region behind these two rocks named Calvin and Hobbes.
Two reversals here. The first one says, reveal the dark city.
Reveal the dark city. Reveal the dark city.
Reveal the dark city.
Reveal the dark city. Yeah, now when I found that reversal, I had absolutely no idea what that meant. And I've since become quite good friends with Richard Hoagland, as you know, and he's got some stunning reversals on his reversal photos on his website that appear to show the remains of a city.
All right, we've just about blown this hour totally away. So what I would like to do is hold on to you, David, and when we come back, I would like to let the audience ask you some questions. We'll intersperse further reversals. Maybe they've got requests because I know you've got a big file. So how about we open the lines?
Oh, sure, I love taking calls.
All right. To David Oates, David John Oates. David, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Getting inundated with emails here. I've never received so many emails ever on any of your programs. I've got one here that's a source of the photograph on your website, okay? This is from Dennis Gerst, who's going to be lecturing in my conference. He says, I believe the effect on his studio cam is what is called a thought form, something well studied by the Theosophists at the turn of the century, something that I discussed in detail in my book. That is, I believe this mystical light shown over Art's brow is being generated by his thought, although they may be generated by the powerful thoughts of others. It's just an interesting comment.
Well, you know, David?
Yeah.
I don't even know right now that I want to talk about it much more. Let's go to the phones, all right?
Okay.
First time caller line, you're on the air with David Oates. Hi.
Yes, sir. How you doing? The best of holidays to you and your family. David, you as well.
Thank you, sir.
Where are you?
I'm in the heart of the gold country. This is JT in the heart of the gold country.
What is the heart of the gold country?
The Sierra Nevada, Central Valley, California.
Very good.
A question for David. First off, if I were to join you in January, pay the money, take your course, satisfy your requirements, would it be possible for me to receive the accreditation from you without signing your code of ethics?
Oh, very good question. With the code of ethics is being completely revamped right now.
Can you explain a little bit the need for it that you feel?
Well, the first speech as such is a very dangerous technology.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I would think that would be the exact reason you would want to eliminate something like that, which is limiting the people that can help you and help protect you in a time when you could be in danger.
I think you're absolutely correct. The way the code of ethics has been worded in the past has been limiting, and that I'll put that on the topic of the convention. The answer to your question is yes. I think there has to be some protection for privacy, though. I really wouldn't want anything in the code of ethics. It would be to protect the privacy of private conversation.
I would think there's many examples, Sony with Beta, Apple computers, to try to limit the technology, the discovery. I think would only hinder you in your progress with this. One more question.
I'm very open to that suggestion, by the way.
Good. Well, good, because that gets me closer to getting the accreditation that I need to move further with what I'm doing. and that would be a great help to me.
Yeah, I would say generally the answer to that question would probably be yes.
Okay.
So that's one of the topics we'll be discussing at the convention.
Well, that's good to hear. One more thing, Jimmy Joe, our Area 51 pilot. I did reversals on him. I have a package together that now that I've contacted you, Art, and David, maybe you too, I'll send them off to you now that you know who I am. I believe Jimmy Joe, given the nature of your program, Art, and the nature of your listeners, I view Jimmy Joe as a hero. I believe that he did what he said he did. The reversals that I got off of his conversation with you all the way to the end were as hair-raising as anything that I've heard transpire to this point, and that's my feelings on that particular situation. The caller where your show went down, from my reversals on him, I viewed him as a fraud, not necessarily as somebody without the power to knock your radio station out or your satellite out, but somebody who, they both have reversals that are the same. And in the caller, I'm convinced that his original call was so spastic he was trying to avoid being reversed, is my feelings on it. And one reversal I pulled out from that original phone call was flip for head side up. Or wait a minute, I got it right from here.
Yeah, wish I could comment on that. I can't get access to the file right now. My jazz drive crashed with all that data.
But anyway, what I had come across was flip for head side up, and it was the same reversal that I got off of one of Steve's. In other words, they had the same unique phrase, both on the caller with the air went dead and on Steve. Which it was the exact same phrase, and led me to believe that maybe these two guys know each other outside of time traveling, So.
All right, my friend. Thank you very much for the call. Wildcard line, you're on the air with David Oates.
Hi, Merry Christmas, people. I'm the caller that called in during the harlot conversation that you did the reversal on, where it said that man is the beast. Oh, good. Maybe you can help shed some light on that. Whoa, geez, I wish I could. The only thing that it kind of baffles me because it's kind of like I don't know, it's really freaking me out because I really honestly searched, like right after you say that, I searched inside and I was thinking, like, what, how could I possibly be thinking that in terms of what I said? The only thing that seemed to make sense, because even when I was just first started to research the Bible and Jesus Christ and everything else, I found him to be a remarkable man. I found him to be a man of total peace in every way. So, even before I believed anything about God, it was, I never had any kind of offensive thoughts about it. So it really confused me. And the only thing I could think of is when I came onto the program, one of the biggest things that, was going through my head at the time was that, I'm confronting, the devil in a sense. And because I really believe that this man should be, a Satan worshiper, and I am not, by any stretch of the imagination. So it's really freaking me out. I'd also like to add that I really 100% believe, that this technology is definitely going to make a lot of headway as well, in how we examine ourselves and so forth. I believe that we have to have some communication with our brain in some way while we're speaking, because, when we're speaking, we don't hear that inner voice that we all hear. It goes away. Like we open up our brains and so I kind of thought after hearing the first program with you on that possibly maybe because we're opening up our brains and we're shooting information out, that somehow maybe when we're speaking we're also communicating back to the brain. To help you with that reversal, but I want to tell you something that happened to me many, many years ago. When I first started doing reverse speech, I was fairly active in churches. I was a youth pastor, and I had some reversals on me who was probably back in 88, 89, that really slammed my whole belief system. It was devastating to me, absolutely devastating. I went into shutdown for several months. It caused me to completely rethink my whole approach to life and my faith. And I mean, reverse speech is not easy. When you get down to the deeper levels, it's like a two-edged sword that pierces your soul, and it really causes us to rethink things. I can see, and also too, it's difficult to draw a argument just based on one reversal. You could actually be referring to space in that reversal. But yeah, I'm not as bold as you say that, you know, like I'm not looking to like make certain excuses, but I did feel the need right away to speak with you because one of the questions I had wanted to ask you was, did you find any other reversals from you? You talking about on your phone call? Yeah, that's the only one that I can recall finding. I didn't look at it very closely. I was primarily concerned with Harlot's reversals, but that one, as I was running it back, I heard it, and it just stuck out at me, you know. So this, you know, I've been through the dark night of the soul with this stuff, and it's shown me all my skills and the causes, and it's hard to deal with. It really is. And I take my clients through this as my practice all the time. It's a side of me that probably never gets talked about on the show, but it's reverse speech is tough. It really is. It really forces us to examine ourselves very closely. All right, Colin? Yeah, can I just add one thing for you on the topic of digital media? Yes. I'm calling from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Actually, when we just right across Fargo, usually this time of year we're under about 3 feet of snow. Well, we had rain yesterday and you can still see the grass. You've got to be. I'm joking.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with David Oakes. Where are you, please?
This is Frank calling you in Missouri. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
How are you? I had a thought on the reverse speech that was played earlier, where they said we floated the wings. Right. I was listening to that, and it sounded to me like they almost said we float volume, which would indicate maybe a suppression or distortion of some kind of evidence found on a piece of the wing. I thought that might be significant, particularly if it was a surface-to-air missile that brought the plane down. Because sometimes they have a proximity fuse, and an explosion could have sent shrapnel into the center fuel tank and into the wing as well.
That's certainly correct, yes.
Yeah, which might have left some telltale evidence there. So, yeah, I think it's probably difficult to really come to a definite conclusion on any one specific reversal. I think the overall trend of it, though, is that we're not being told the whole story. Something is certainly the hidden. I don't think there's any doubt about that based on the reversal that I've found so far. I certainly agree with you there, David. And I'd like to mention, by the way, I went to reversespeech.com, and I'd always been extremely skeptical about this kind of thing. And all it took was one visit there, and I was an absolute believer. Those sound files that you have there will make anyone a believer, so I recommend anyone go there.
All right. Thank you very much. And the new website is available only through mine momentarily. That will eventually change. Right now, to get to David's new website, you've got to go up through www.artbell.com. Scroll down to David's name, David John Oates, and click on it, and it'll take you to the brand new website. Western Rockies, you're on there with David Oates.
Yes. Good evening, gentlemen. Hi, David. Art, how are you doing?
I'm freaked out. David's okay.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Outstanding show, gentlemen. Very freaky. I heard your the picture on the website. Supposedly a jam next door to put you up on the website. Looked at the picture and very interesting. Very interesting. I have a question and a statement. The question is, do you think possibly reverse
reading, maybe, let's say, would work in gambling. Let's say, like, reading, like the horses, reading the thing from the horses saying so and so will finish this way, so and so will finish that way.
I've got a client of mine who brings me tape from her stockbroker to do reversals on. She comes in once a week, and based on reversals I've found, she's made some extremely successful investments. And I'm moving in that direction.
Interesting. And if you have a statement also, I have a friend of mine that's probably listening here in Phoenix. By the way, my name is Brian. Make sure that she knows who I'm talking about. I'll use the first name. Her name is Madison, and I would like to say, hey, what are you doing? Are you listening? Are you enjoying the show? I told her all about the rehearsals with Harlan and David, and I hope she enjoyed the show. And
well, I hope you did too, Colin. Thank you. And I try to rack up points with a girl. I don't know. Cheesy. East of the Rockies, around there with David Oaks. Hello. Thank you. Where are you? Okay.
I had jumped out for that reversal for a long about it, just talked about, just couple of stages of the reversal. And so what was pointed out was thinking about how could anybody, be on the beach, and then for some thinking about Satan, about this lady, the Lord's information that probably something about something to go out there. So to me, it's all like such a real stuff is out there, and Satan, witchcraft, and so it's out there.
I'm not sure which reversal you're referring to on that one.
From the first one,
Okay.
I'm sorry, there were how many? 30? Something like that.
30 on it. It's hard to pick what that down.
All right, we'd have to go back and review that, man. Thank you very much. David, hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour once again. Strange nights. Well, I'll say I've had a few strange nights. That's sarcastic. And this one goes down as one of those. Anyway, don't forget tomorrow night.
Okay, I've got a couple of things I need to comment on. I'm just getting inundated with emails here. They're pouring in. A lot of questions about reverse speech software. We have a beta version out now of the software that will actually turn the computer into a reverse machine. This will be demonstrated at the convention in Los Angeles on January 2nd and 3rd.
All right, now so that everybody understands what you're talking about, this software, if I understand it correctly, looks through a long forward speech section, identifies where the reverse speech is. Is that correct?
That is the stage 2 software. That is not released yet, but that software is well in the progression. In fact, I had an update on that today. And what that version does is, yes, that you have a very unique tonal signature to them. I mean, as you can hear when I play them on the air, very melodious sing-song rhythm tone to them. Right. The software will detect that same tonal signature backwards in speed. So you'll be able to run it. You'll be able to load a WAV file into your computer, put the software on, and it will actually find the characteristic tonal signature. It will not translate it for you, but it will find it, which will reduce the workload substantially. Sure. That software is still not ready to be released yet. The software that is being released now will actually turn the computer into a reversing machine with instant forward and backward speed control or automatic dumps. That will be demonstrated at the reverse speech extension. You can also call the office at 1-800-669-5789 to get further information of that. That should be out by January 2nd and 3rd.
again, your email address
is backward@reversebeach.com. And for that, all the software, we also have a new machine out, fully enclosed, decontrol enclosed, speakers enclosed. I'm on there. You're on here. Hello, I'm David. John, how are you? I'm very good. And I don't know, I'm a little nervous here, but I want to say that when you first heard your first interview, it's changed my life. It's changed, I really believe it. And, let's see. I want to ask you, David, you mentioned something about Portland, I believe, this weekend. Yes, I'm leaving in Portland on Saturday night at 7 o'clock. That's actually located at the Portland Conference Center. Number to call, that's area 503-237-3293. I would recommend you call immediately. I know they're practically sold out. That's what I heard you say, and I already watched message on your 800 number, and I'm very, very much willing to be there. Right. That will be followed up by a 2-day workshop in the middle of January sometime. We haven't quite set the date for that yet. We'll just field the questions on Saturday night and see what happens. Thank you so much for the kind words about Reverse Beach. I get those sort of comments frequently. People consider this a life-changing phenomenon. Oh, very much so. Very changed mine. I just sent a package down to your school, if that's the right word. And I don't know whether it means anything, but I have hundreds and hundreds of hours. And so much energy has gone into it. And I thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Are you one of my correspondents? Not yet, but I will do the wild thing at 702-727-1295. You've got to cut that out. We don't allow last names on there. Sorry about that. John, oh, I see. Well, we'll run the push for some. Anyway, I'm going to get off there. Thank you. All right, take care. Thank you very much. Just on that point, my next training class is the last weekend of January in town. We also have correspondence courses available. So just okay. Houston Rockies, you're on the air with David Oates. Hi. Hello. Where are you? I was listening to the other caller. I wasn't sure if I was up next or you're up now. Where are you? I'm in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania. Aaron, hi. Well, first, hi, Dave. Hi, how are you? I just will say that I'm pretty much convinced, but I have a hard time with taking the reverse speech beyond to the point where you would be able to prove that this is, like, say, you get a reverse on someone and you say, well, this is what their subconscious is actually saying. I have a hard time taking it to that point and saying, well, this is actually proof, because how can you ever really prove that that was actually what they were thinking? But that's not really what it's just kind of how I feel about the issue at this point. But well, there's nothing wrong with healthy skepticism unless we constantly question. We can never learn and grow, My question actually is kind of involves the art a little bit to help me dig up the exact incident here, but I was kind of drifting in and out of sleep the other night. We were having a weird occurrence morning or something like that. Oh, yes. And somebody called. I don't remember exactly what he was dealing with. I think he was saying something about Area 51. He used to work there or something. Yes. And you commented that this was the only thing I really remember, other than his voice, that he was pretty much saying and corroborating something that Colonel Corso. That's right. Do you remember that guy? Yes, I do. Well, I just wanted to say that his voice sounded to me almost exactly like the guy who got him locked off the air. Like the quality of his voice. I just thought that might be kind of important if anybody else thought that. And if you wanted to reverse that and see what was up with that. All right, appreciate it.
Thank you very much. There are a lot of people who have thought they've heard that voice. Those high tonal qualities are pretty distinctive. Wildcard Line, you're on the air with David Oates. Hi.
Hello. This is your man in black, Area 51 time traveler by the name of Steve. I'm back. How y'all doing?
Steve.
Oh, yeah. The last guy was talking about me, but I can assure you I don't know Brian in Philadelphia. We have never met, but I know a lot more about that. I see. I look to you by forward and backwards. Yes, I have something to say to you very important there, Mr. Oates. I don't hold anything against you for anything that you've ever reversed. I want you to know that, first of all. Okay, thank you. And if those men in black are giving you any trouble, well, after December 31st, it won't be my fault anymore. And why is that? Because as of January 1st, I will no longer be a mission commander for the Men in Black. From that day forward, I will be the permanent lifetime spokesperson on Earth for the Supreme Commandant. Which is one of the reasons, Art, that I thought you might want to have me on as a guest sometime in January.
Well, I might. I mean, it depends on, what the Commandant, of course, wants to say through you, so we'll look forward to that sometime in January. David, hold on one moment. We'll be right back. Are you overweight? Would you like to lose an average of 8 to 10 pounds in the next month? Hello. Hello. And you. Scott from Yes, Scott. With reference to the floating wing statement. Yes. I do believe one of the Russian fighter planes, I think it's MiG-29, called the Flagger. It's either that or the Sequoia SU-27. I think that's right. And we've been able to accept a few defectors in the planes. And recently, in February this year, we purchased outside planes from the Republic of Belarus. Keep it out of the hands of the Iranians for a good time. Well, listen, I appreciate the comment. This always happens, David. When we play something that we're not really certain about, we get a lot of interpretation. Yeah, and where do you go with it? It's tough sometimes. It is. First time caller line, you're on the air with David Oates. Hi. Hello. Yes, Matthew. All right. A lot of callers from Lincoln. Yeah, well, I'm surprised to get another one. I'm not supposed to be able to play. No, you're not. Yeah, so anyway, more to call concerning a couple of things. One of them about the block and something like people coming in the room. Right, well, let me just correct this up back with Mark. Yeah, Satan, he sends love, I think. I found that very clear only because you don't want to have the info. Those people have the first of the aircraft and how we're going to do it. Right. And kind of looking at the job, what would be a little bit first. I would be very clear on that's interesting. That's how I thought. And I'm also wondering if it would not be possible that each message that they not possibly spiritually influenced. Spiritually influenced. I get asked that question all the time, and to be frank, I try to avoid it. Ultimately, we don't know. Reverted speech is an unconscious function. I guess what I'm trying to do is to get the theory accepted that this does exist. What its source is will be a debate for philosophers for eons to come, I'm sure. It's possible, I guess. I mean, but I just don't know. I stick to the mainstream line. This is the unconscious mind speaking, and the question arises, what is the unconscious? I mean, that's the only way I can answer that. All right. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with David John Oates. Get that radio. Tell you what's for Going from Lynchburg again. From where? Lynchburg. Lynchburg, yes, sir. I called you the other day. Hey, I had a question for David. Yeah. I was wondering if you took a paragraph
and independently had two separate people read it. Right. It was the basic same articulation. Right. I wonder if you would get the same reversals from the two of them, or how would that work? Well, that's been a test that's tried many, many times. If you can articulate it as closely as you possibly can, you may get something that sounds similar, but the fact is that no two people do speak alike, and intonation varies dramatically from person to person. We've been able to get something that sounds something like the reversal after many attempts of speaking it exactly right. You know, interesting, I had a question was asked, that very question was asked in one of the lectures I did live on the Neil Armstrong reversal. Someone wanted me to say that publicly and reverse it, and I did. And we got a reversal out that said this is a gamble, which is exactly what I was thinking as well. I've had people who've gotten close, but generally that's the exception, and you are trying to manufacture and repeat. The fact is that no two people speak identical. Yeah, that's true. I also had a comment. I was kind of hoping that Charlotte would be listening tonight, that she would try and get through and comment on her reversals, because I found it quite interesting. Kind of interested in to see what she had to say about it, and well, maybe we can get her comments, or I'll let you know how to contact me. I hope she does, because I'll make her a good show, but it's all right? Well, Merry Christmas, don't you? It's a great show, and I'm a faithful listener, and I'll keep it up. Thank you. Take care. We might have time for one more. First time for a line, Javier and David outside. Yes, sir. I was wondering, do you think yes. Unless you held something back, I think we've heard pretty much what she said, right, David? Oh, yeah, that's pretty much what she said, yeah. That's the word from pretty well straightforward. I think there's not much interpretation needed on most of them. Exactly. All right, David, we have no more time left, so if you would like to give out again your email address or phone number, do it now. Yes, my phone number is 1-800-669-5789. If you can't get through on that, try 760-732-3097. We have a new machine out on my email address, backwards@reversebeach.com. Once again, 1-800-669-5789 for any information on convention, lectures, training class coming up. And that's it. All right, my friend, just not quite it. I have one more thing to say to you. Be careful. Yes, I'm getting that message loud and clear. And we are taking extra precautions now. And like I said, I sent my son back to Australia. It was getting a little bit too hot. I'm going to be on the Gerardo Rivera show on December the 26th. Watch out for that. Who knows what will happen as a result. Well, if it was not already taped, I'd tell you, I'd give you the same advice there. Be careful. I will attempt to do so. You will be hearing much more of me in the future. That I can guarantee. Take care, David. Take care. Good night. That's David John Holtz, and that, folks, is Reverse Speech. Tomorrow night, David. Good evening.
great land and beyond. From the Asian Hawaiian Island chains in the west, eastward, the Caribbean and the U.S. Virgin Islands, south in South America, north all the way to the pole, and worldwide on the internet. This is Host for Dan, and I'm Raphael. Good morning. It's great to be here. Yes, we are here live. And tonight is going to be a show of synchronicity. Synchronicity. I'm going to tell you, many of you would not have heard it, so I'm going to tell you what happened last night first, because it bears what we're going to do this evening. So let me tell you, and I understand that many of you do not have computers, so I'm going to basically explain the rationale that I have here, which is technically really cool, by the way. I have when I'm on the air, a full-time connection to the internet. And I have 3 in-studio cameras, Howard Industry cameras, by the way, which you can get from the Zoo Training Company, front plug. And one is to the side of me, one is directly in front of me, and the other is to the side and rear of me. And I built a little lash up where I have a sequencer, and I sequence these cameras, and about, I don't know, every 45 seconds, a new picture is automatically snapped by whichever camera happens to be active at that moment and sent to the internet. Now, I have been doing this for at least a half a year, 5 hours per night. We have sent from these same cameras under the precise same lighting conditions, literally tens of thousands of pictures of, me doing the show here in the studio on a weekly basis, sitting here doing the show. Just fun for the website and fun for people who are listening to the program to be able to go out there and see me doing the program. To get the chronology correct, last night we were doing a show with David Oates, Reverse Speech. If you missed it, you'll catch it tomorrow night. I think they're repeating it tomorrow night. Now, we were doing reversals. In fact, we were concluding reversals on the show with Harlot, Patsy, the devil worshiper, the Satanist, acclaimed witch. She said she was a witch, but it was obvious by the end of the show that she was a Satan worshiper. Now, this was one scary young lady in so many ways, and the one, of course, that is most prominently remembered by me and anybody else who ever heard it was about her daughter. And she was, of course, dedicated, she said, to Satan. And so I asked her a rather poignant question at the very end of the program. I said, Patsy, or Harlot, how do you know? I mean, you have embraced Satan, you know you're going to hell and that's where you'll be, but your daughter, very young daughter, 3 years old or something, was murdered by your ex-husband. How do you're going to be in one place and she's going to be in the other? And she said, oh, no, she won't. I conducted a ceremony or a ritual, I forget what she said, to ensure that she would be embraced by hell, by Satan. Really freaky stuff. And this is what we were discussing. I was actually, I think, having David repeat that segment, that reversal, which was frightening in itself. Yeah. With that as a setup, it was 1 hour, 01:26:21. In other words, 26 minutes after 1 o'clock in the morning, and seconds and change. Now, I happened, I've got a monitor right next to me that shows me these photographs, and I glanced over it at it, and I about had a heart attack. I'm serious, I about had a heart attack. The photograph that was showing on the monitor was completely, in my opinion, inexplicable, and so I quickly reached over and I froze it. You know, I've got a mouse in right here, and I froze the photograph, boom, like that, and left it there, and it is still there right now. Now, why is this unusual? A, because of what we were talking about. B, because there is, I don't know how you would describe it, a protoplasmic something covering the front portion of my entire head. And if you look very carefully and do any analysis of this electronic picture, which, believe me, people have been doing like crazy, one might guess or conclude a whole lot of things. Now, number one, bear in mind, this is a CCD camera, and these pictures are being sent live. So there's no double exposure here because it's not a camera. B, we have sent tens of thousands of similar pictures from similar angles to the website over the last half year, and nothing like this has ever manifested. So it scared me. I mean, it really, truly scared me, and I think with very good cause. It's inexplicable in nearly every way that you can try and talk about it. Simply inexplicable. It does not cover just my head, but actually out and beyond my head. Now, let's cover some of the obvious possibilities of smoke. Could it be smoke? Well, yeah, but it isn't. As a matter of fact, at that moment, I was not smoking, for one thing. For another, the obvious trail of smoke from my hand, or say the ashtray, which is, if you look carefully, is visible in the photograph. It would show a trail of smoke from there, or say from my mouth upward, to explain this photograph. None of that is true. None of that is there. I think that this is a genuine what? Ghost photograph? Maybe a ghost, maybe an entity, maybe a presence, maybe the subject material, maybe harlot, maybe a lot of things. I don't know, but I can tell you this. I had quite a discussion with Keith, my webmaster. He said, well, some have suggested it might be a reflection from your watch band. Not a chance. Look carefully at the picture. It's up there now, and you will see my watch band, and you will clearly see the watch band is not reflecting anything which it would in a very shiny way. This is not a reflection of anything. It's not double exposed. It's not scanned. It's not, excuse the English, it's not nothing. It's just a raw, straight out image. And I believe proof of I don't know what. Could this have been something that came from my mind? Could this be something that came... wait. In other words, where did this come from? I don't know. Somebody called and said, well, Art, it's just gray hair. Oh, I don't have gray hair. I have, maybe a couple of strands of gray hair. 2 strands of gray hair, and I have a fair amount of gray in my mustache, but my hair, for the most part, is dark brown, and black. So I'm keeping that photograph up there, and I really recommend that any of you who feel like doing it, grab that photograph, disassemble it in any manner you wish, magnify it, go to work on it, do whatever you can do with it, and you tell me what it is. But I know what it isn't. Now, when you talk with people like my guest coming up, Dale Husband, who runs the Ghost Research Society, in Oakland, Illinois, which, by the way, is near Chicago, and I'll be telling you more about him in a moment. I've done many interviews with people like Dale, who do research on things like this, but never before, with the exception maybe of one sharp knock on my door that scared the heck out of me, never before have I had any personal photographic evidence of anything in all the years that I've talked about these subjects, and it's been a lot of years now, folks, a lot of years now, and I have never seen anything like this. Now, some people called and said, well, nice gray hair, and so I had Keith look back through the files of other photographs, every now and then he will save the last photograph taken every night by these studio cams. I said, please put one up there, similar angle if you can find it. He has done that. In the new items on my website, you will see two photographs. You've got to click on them to make them full size. One is the current studio cam photograph, and the other is a photograph taken at the same angle to give you an idea of what color my hair really is. So there you have it. I believe what I have up there right now is one of the most inexplicable photographs I have ever seen in my entire life, because of all the reasons that I just gave you. My wife looked at it and went, holy smokes, or a derivation thereof, and stared at it for a very long time, as did my boss, as have, Bob Crane, everybody I know. I called today and I said, please take a look at this photograph. So there you have it. If you want to see it, it's on my website right now, either by going to the studio cam. Now, I will activate that live and wipe this photograph out eventually. Here, maybe in a couple hours. I'm going to leave it up there for a while. And you can see the comparison that Keith put up, which is in, I believe, the first item in the new item section. I mean, when I tell you this is freaky, I'm telling you from a person, and I don't very frequently get to do that. This isn't someone else. This is not somebody's story. This is me telling you this happened last night and scared the heck out of me. So anyway, coming up shortly, and of course it's fairly synchronistic, is it not, that I have somebody who is an expert in just exactly this sort of thing coming on here in a moment. Now, as we approach Christmas, and boy, is it ever approaching, and yes, you can still get a gold rose by Christmas. The people at the American Gold Rose Company are back. They take real, honest-to-God roses at their peak moment and dip them into 24-karat gold, which freezes them in time for all time, just perfect and just right for the holidays. Here's the collection they have that you can have. The Classic Rose, priced at $49.95, 11 inches long. Then, the Hollywood Elite, $65, and you can send someone a long stem gold rose, 17 inches long. Or just order the original rose, simple, no leaves, $39.95. All of these in 24-karat gold, and there is more. If you buy any 2 roses right now, you receive a free Christmas pendant made of a genuine mistletoe leaf. Pretty cool, huh? And what do they do with that? Dip it in 24-karat gold. It's a $23 value. The American Gold Rose Company, call them right now at 1-800-458-7134. They can get it to you by Christmas. 1-800-458-7134, or anybody else you want to send it to, of course. Alaska, Hawaii, and Canada, area code 918-687-0404. It's the American Gold Rose Company. Are you overweight? Would you like to lose an average 8 to 10 pounds in the next month? We know that fiber helps sweep fat out of the digestive tract like a broom, reducing the amount of fat your body stores as excess weight. Well, Let me tell you about a revolutionary fiber. Hydrogen is a natural fiber that comes from shellfish. It not only sweeps fat, but also absorbs up to 10 times more fat than other fibers. You can get this fiber in a formula called Kyto Slim. Kyto Slim is effective because you can lose weight without changing your eating habits. And there are no stimulants. It's a gentle, effective way to lose excess weight. Here's the special offer. When you order a 90-day supply of Kyto Slim, you'll get an antioxidant moisturizing cream absolutely free. Call 1-800-557-4627. It's guaranteed to work on your money back, and it's not available in stores. So call 1-800-557-4627. That's 1-800-557-4627. You've got nothing to lose but the fact. Now, I would like any of you, when we get into open lines, who have analyzed this photograph, and if you can manage to analyze it, chime in, and I would like to hear your thoughts. And unfortunately, I did call Dale earlier today and alert him to this photograph, and so he has seen it. Who is Dale David Kaczmarek? Well, he has been actively investigating paranormal phenomena since 1975, though his interests go far beyond that. He says he works with physics, which help to complement my investigations, whether local or out of state. Yes, he is a ghost investigator. He has conducted many investigations concerning ghost lights, haunted houses, battlefields, cemeteries, Indian burial grounds, murder sites, churches, sacred sites, and so on. He is currently listed in the Encyclopedia of Association's Directory of Newsletters, the Forensic Services Directory, Instant Information. He personally directs excursions into the unknown, haunted Chicagoland tours, which is part of the Oaklawn Chamber of Commerce and has led groups to England as well. He contributed a chapter for a book released by Bantam called True Tales of the Unknown, the Uninvited, and several chapters for Dead Zones, released by Warner Brothers and both edited by Sharon Jarvis. He's also written a book tentatively entitled Windy City Ghosts, which deals with strange and unusual sightings in and around Chicago. The latter has not yet been accepted for publication, so I guess he has a manuscript of it. He is a sub-operator for several computer bulletin board systems and belongs to America Online, and has been to England and Wales seeking out the paranormal. He is a member of all kinds of, the Ghost Research Society, editor of Ghost Trackers newsletter, is a member of the American Electronic Voice Phenomena group, honorary life member of the Ghost Club, Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained, and so forth and so on. Here is Dale Kaczmarek. Dale, welcome to the program.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. I booked you will recall, when did I book you anyway? I booked you, when did we first talk on the phone, do you recall?
Oh, 2 days back.
2 days ago, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, I had no idea that I would be running into, I usually try to stay pretty objective, Dale. I have been on a search, a lifelong search, and I think many of us have, to try and figure out if there is some sort of conscious existence, beyond death. And I've been at that for years and years and years, and I guess you have too. Because it says here in personal goals that you too are really seeking to try and figure out if there is something that is beyond this life. How sure are you there is?
Well, I'm very sure. I've been investigating sites and locations for 25, 30 years now. I have never actually seen one myself, but I believe through the evidence we've collected over the years, as far as our electronic equipment that we bring along to investigate sites, being in locations where I've had little brushes with the paranormal, including cold spots that I've felt, should not be there, strange odors and psychic smells. And many of the photographs that we have taken at unusual locations, or sometimes just pictures that people have sent me from around the world that show unusual forms, shapes, semi-transparent figures of people or animals sometimes that were not there when these people took the photographs. So
Right.
it's not just a matter of whether I believe or disbelieve in the subject. I think it's just the preponderance of the evidence that I've gotten over the years that really has directed me to the path of trying to seek out what these things really are.
Okay, so then your approach to this has been evidentiary. In other words, you've tried to simply collect evidence on audio or video or photographs or going in with equipment to measure that kind of thing. You've been looking for direct and hard evidence.
Direct and hard evidence, but also trying to rule out, obviously, to begin with, natural explanations that cause these hauntings or the ghost phenomena. And by using the equipment, by using the cameras and various forms of equipment that we do use, we can rule out a lot of possible natural explanations and get down to the nitty-gritty, so to speak.
And you've been doing this now for 30 years?
Close to 30 years, yes.
How come? An obvious question. In other words, it's an odd field. What takes somebody like you into a field like this?
Well, it sounds a little corny, actually, but my parents told me ghost stories when I was a youngster. It kind of stuck with me as I began to get a little bit older and trying to find out which stories were true, which stories were false. There are a lot of stories in Chicago and the area, in the suburbs that I've been working on for quite a number of years, and some have turned out to be dead ends. Others tend to be more evidential as far as what's there.
And of course, that is going to be the next question. What is there? But I mean, how did you begin? Did you begin it as a hobby? I know now you give tours and that sort of thing. So, in a sense, I guess you're a professional. Is that fair?
Yes, it generally was a hobby at first. It was something I enjoyed doing, and I still enjoy doing. But then it became more of a full-time vocation, if you will, to actually seek out these locations, talk to people, interview people who have had experiences, and then actually go into the on-site investigations.
Yeah, the fun part. All right, Dale, hold on. We'll be right back to you. Bottom of the hour, coast to coast AM, just getting started. On Coast to Coast AM from outside the U.S. First time access number is to the USA. Dial 1-200-333-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM from the Kingdom of Pride. With our title, Prime would be the last Dale Castro is my guest. From Chicago, he has a society that requests for ghosts. We'll get back to him in a moment. By the way, on this errand, I'm supposed to be saying hello there to WLNI FM in Madison Heights, Virginia, actually serving the Lynchburg, Virginia area. So, as the march toward FM talk radio continues, you will find them at 105.9 on the FM dial all over the Lynchburg area. Welcome to the program. Glad to have you. The network just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. Just one quick comment. I'm getting a million faxes on this photograph. Here, I'm studying a photo of the ectoplasm, that's what he calls it. We'll ask about that. Seemingly ingrained from your hand. I'm doing it very carefully and clearly. Disseminating and analyzing all of the many possibilities. And I've come to the only logical conclusion, and it is you're a spoof. Aloha Bomb from Rocky. And too long. All right, back now to Chicago, or the Chicago area, and Dale Kazmarek. Dale, welcome back. Thank you. I am getting your last name correct, am I not? Kazmarek. Kazmarek. Okay, thank you. You have taken, let me begin with my own scary, frightening experience here. You've looked at that photograph on the website. What do you think?
Well, at first glance, and I've actually had a chance to get a copy off there and print it out on my color printer here. So I'm looking at it right now as I'm talking to you. Again, at first glance, it looks like you aged about 30 or 40 years. Everything in front of your headset is just generally white, and there is some actually coming off the actual forehead into space here. I have seen only maybe a handful of similar photographs. This could be a lot of different things. At first glance, it looks to me like some form of energy, maybe some form of ectoplasm, some sort of living energy.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Sure. What in the heck is ectoplasm? Someone said that in facts. Ectoplasm, what is it?
Well, ectoplasm is very often encountered in seances where a psychic or a medium is giving a seance, and sometimes this substance, whether it be cloud-like material, seems to exude from the fingertips, sometimes from the head, sometimes from the other extremities. The thought behind what ectoplasm it really is living organic material. In other words, externalization of thought.
Externalization of thought. Mm-hmm. As in my thought.
As of anybody's thoughts. That's one theory of what it could be. The other theory is maybe a little bit more far-fetched, that perhaps there was something in the studio that time, and it was just happened to be captured on that one single frame and nothing else, meaning an entity of some kind.
You heard the context in which the moment that it was taken is actually time-stamped on there, thankfully. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about this end sequence with this gal I had interviewed, Harlot, the Satanist. Mm-hmm. And I wonder so that leads me to wonder two things. I'm so in the dark about all this. In other words, did this come from my mind because of the subject material being discussed, or did this come from perhaps Harlot, for all I know, or somebody capable of projecting this sort of thing? I don't know. I'm so lost, Dale. I'm so lost.
It could be either or. I'm basically kind of grasping at straws right now, just having a few hours to actually look at this photograph. But it is very strange. I haven't actually seen the comparison photographs, but I've seen other photographs generated through your website.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
From the same camera, same angle, same lighting. Nothing changed. Nothing. And the only thing that I saw earlier in the day, did my watch reflect on it? But you'll see my watch there, and if the watch was reflecting, there would be a flash from that in the lens itself.
Correct.
And I doubt that it would, in fact, I should try some experiments with these CCD cameras, but I doubt that it would, even a reflection, I suppose if I got a mirror and shine light into it at various angles, I could experiment, but it doesn't produce something like this.
Well, the thing about reflection is that you must be reflecting off a reflective surface to get a reflection. Surely your hair is not a reflective subject.
No.
Not like a mirror or a glazed surface, or something that has the ability to bounce back that light back to the camera or whatever's taking the picture. Obviously, your hair is not made of that substance that would be able to bounce back that light. So I would effectively rule out, reflection at this point.
The other thing is where my watch was at an angle. If you look at it, the lights are all above me. There's no angle to the camera from that watch. you can see a very light, brighter portion on the watch, but not a reflection. So I am totally lost. I am totally dumbfounded, kind of scared, and really lost. And I'm glad you're on the air tonight, sort of. You've seen other photographs like this, though.
Yeah, similar. Usually they're some sort of strange anomalous type mist that can be anywhere from white to gray or even blue. I have many examples on my website. Very often, this is the most often recorded type of phenomenon, some sort of strange mist or glow. Again, this may be a form of some sort of random energy. This may be something like a spirit that is trying to take form into more of a human appearance or an animal appearance, and it hasn't quite coalesced into that figure. Again, most of these photographs are usually taken when people don't see something, and something later shows up in the film when it gets developed. And it's not normally caused by, development flaws or something of this nature. I've had many of these photographs analyzed by Kodak in Rochester, New York. I work with photography people, specialists, and experts in the field, right, to kind of get their feel. They develop film for a living all the time, and they know what would cause certain types of lights or mist or flaws to show up on these films.
Well, I know, for example, that people can get their camera strapped in front of the lens.
Yes.
It's way out of focus. It shows up as kind of a stripe or a mist or something.
Exactly.
But here we've got a CCD camera, no double exposure possible, no camera strap. Very fixed conditions where tens of thousands of similar photographs have been taken. Really, I am sorry I can't let it alone. I've been freaked out about it since yesterday. And I guess I'd like to know what it means. Do you think there's no way to know? What am I asking you for? You can't know. Does it mean that there's a haunting going on? Does it mean that because I was dealing with this material, that there was some sort of synergy going on that caused it? I don't know. Anyway, I'm through talking.
It does look like some form of energy, but again, what actually it is, it's really kind of hard to say if it's caused by a living person or by a non-living entity of some kind. It does look like some form of cloudy, misty substance. But more than that, I really can't venture a guess at this point. I probably have to do a little more examining on it.
All right, I want to leave it alone anyway. Those who want to see it is on my website. And by the way, if you go to my website and scroll down to the guest area, you will see Dale Kazmarek's name. Kazmarek? Kazmarek. I'll get it. Kazmarek. And just click on his name, and you will go to his website, and there will be many examples of those photographs. And I guess, Dale, I would ask you to start off by sort of laying out to the audience what you've seen, what you know, maybe some of your better stories. Whatever you've got, let it unfold the way you want.
Okay, well, basically what I try to do when I get involved with a location is, number one thing is to rule out natural explanations. We do go through regular interviews with people to find out what's going on from start to finish. We then bring in some scientific equipment that we do use. Now, the equipment that we do use actually has other purposes for it. In other words, you can't simply go out to a local hardware store or to a local department store and ask to buy ghost-busting equipment.
What do you use? Yeah, that's a good question. What kind of equipment?
We use devices that will register and pick up anomalous energies or deviations in electromagnetic fields. There is a theory that when there is a presence of some kind, that there may be a disturbance of some flux or disturbance in the electromagnetic field, and then these equipment that we do have will pick up this sort of flux. We use a device called a tri-field meter. It's a device that was put together by Bill Lee of Alpha Labs out in in Salt Lake City.
A tri-field meter.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Tri-field indicates it's looking at three things.
The meter can be set for different types of things, from electromagnetic to simply electrical energy. We'll also pick up radio and microwave as well.
Okay.
And this device has safeguards built in so that whatever reading you're getting is, for the most part, not caused by power surges in the house, electrical wiring. In other words, there are filters and safeguards built in for this. Whatever reading you get, you then have to sort of analyze it as you're getting it to find out there is another possible explanation for it. We've used this with great success in investigating sites because not only will it pick up electromagnetic disturbances, if you set this on simply the electrical setting and leave it in a room, it will react to any motion or any movement in that room, which then would then give an audible and a visual signal on the device. We also use that along with voice-activated tape recorders at the same time. In other words, with that, there would be a movement in the room that would then kick on the tape recorder, and the tape recorder would begin to record the sounds of what's going on in that particular room.
All right. One at a time. The electromagnetic deviation that you look for, that makes absolute sense to me. And I understand that. The movement sensor. Now, a movement sensor, for example, I have them all around my home. And when people are within, 100 yards or 50 yards or whatever, they sense movement or heat of the body and automatically turn on the floods. Is it the same kind of thing?
Well, basically what this device is actually picking up and capturing is energy in motion, in other words, kinetic energy. You can simply wave your hand in front of this device, and by breaking up the electrical energy in front of this device, it will then give a signal.
Right.
This can be used in cases such as poltergeist cases where there are movements of objects that simply fly around from place to place.
Oh, yes.
So that device is the most often used piece of device that we do use.
Okay. That would indicate, certainly in poltergeist activity where some physical thing is moving, I would understand that. But you would imagine that some sort of entity, like the one you might see in the picture of me there, would not set off anything unusual. In other words, I didn't see any substance. That's slightly wrong. There was some substance, but not in the same physical sense of your body and my body in front of a motion sensor. Now, I sure wish I had something to look at the electromagnetic state in here at that moment, but I didn't. What do you find in your investigations electromagnetically? How frequently do you see electromagnetic deviations when there's something going on?
Usually better than 70 or 80% of the time. If there's something particularly going on as far as a haunting, whether it be movements of objects, strange noises, smells, visual apparitions, or some sort of paranormal occurrences going on, this device will normally kind of almost lead you right to where the site is, where in this building may be. It's like using a watchdog or a bloodhound to pick up a trail of something. This device will basically lead you to wherever the deviation is the strongest. Now, that deviation may fluctuate. From time to time, it may be a very high signal, it may be a low signal. It really depends on the conditions in the room and even the strength of the ghost, if you will, that's giving off this signal.
All right. What about, now here's one thing I didn't feel last night. I didn't feel the much described cold spot. There was no cold involved with this, that I recall at all, none. And yet I hear so many people when they talk about apparitions and ghosts feeling or sensing some sort of very cold spot that can actually, I'm told, be measured with a thermometer. Yes?
We go one step further than that. We actually have what's called a Raytech non-contact infrared device. That it's like, it looks like a plastic gun, basically. And basically what you do is you point this anywhere in the room, and it'll give you an instant reading, bouncing off whatever object or coldness or hot spot might be in the room, and give you an instantaneous reading rather than waiting for a thermometer to adjust to that cold spot, which can take several minutes.
Right.
This device will give you an instant reading, and you can literally take us around the room with the trigger held, and you can see the fluctuation of temperature from one room to another, from one area on that particular room to another. And again, pinpoint the cold spot if there in fact is one there.
What have you ever seen with that? How much of a differential have you ever seen in any given room?
To give you an example, I was doing some work in a cemetery. In an outdoor situation, which you would think would be the same temperature pretty much everywhere.
Or at least in any given localized area,
Sure. Within a few degrees. We were in a cemetery in downstate Decatur, Greenwood Cemetery, and I was getting readings of about, say, 80 or 82 degrees roughly on ground level. And I picked this up approximately, I would say, maybe 45 degrees off the ground, so maybe, I'm guessing 10, 12, 15 feet off the ground. I got a differential of about 22 degrees.
22 degrees.
Yeah, so that's quite cold.
Was this
The surrounding air down 10 to 12 feet further down.
Was this in association with any sort of thing that was going on?
Well, the area we were in was an area that was well known to have produced phenomena in the past and is currently continuing to produce some sort of phenomena.
Even now?
Even now.
How does it manifest?
I believe that particular section, there were an area not too far away from there where ghost lights had been seen to float around at night. These were iridescent type glowing objects that was being seen out there. This was near a Civil War section of this particular cemetery. That portion of it had literally washed away at one time because it was located on a hill, and they had to sort of reinforce the area, so there were a lot of bodies that had been washed away too.
Oh boy.
It was very clear, very differential readings as far as temperature was concerned.
All right, Dale, hold tight. We will be right back. We're at the top of the hour. You've got a good rest, and I can use it too. This is Coast to Coast.
Thinking about getting something nice.
Glad to be here too. If I actually do tours in the Chicago area, in their public areas, and we're about to deal with a question that I think is the big and that is, what is the coast? So that's coming up shortly. All right, I'm going to leave that photograph up on the website now for about another hour and a half, something like that. And after that, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn on the camera system so you start getting live photographs, and I'm going to isolate it to the camera that took that particular picture. And I'm going to sit here with my watch and anything else I can think to do and try to cause a reflection that might duplicate what I've got. That's a worthwhile experiment. I'll do that maybe in an hour and a half. Right now, and very quickly, before going back to Dale Kazmarek. Oh, Kazmarek. I've got to get that down. A guest called a private number here who was on the other night, and he was talking, you'll recall, about the use of the frontal lobe area of our brain. We were discussing the fact that we don't use much more than about 10%. And Neil Slade was telling us ways that we might switch on the frontal lobe portion of our brain and the areas of higher intuitive abilities and psychic abilities. And he wanted to say a word very quickly about what this photograph might show. Neil, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
You've seen the photograph in question, I take it.
Right. I certainly don't want to step on the toes of your guest tonight. I respect and welcome any opinions that you might have on this. But what I'd like to give you is the perspective from Brain as to what I have a very, very strong belief in what we're looking at here. Just this evening, I looked at the photo, right? And my amygdala automatically flipped forward into my frontal lobes. And I instantly, logically, and intuitively knew what I was looking at. So that's what the process was in my brain. Okay. Your frontal lobes they're always on to a certain extent. Okay. And if one of the things your frontal lobes do, they try to make sense of perplexing information. They try to solve problems. What you were dealing with that night was a mental threat, okay, which originates in your reptile brain. And on that evening, it was thoughts and fears of Satanism and all the questions that this woman harlot was very disturbing topic to you. Now, in the same way that an old lady can lift a car off a person in an inhuman burst of strength in an emergency, we've all heard these stories for sure. Your frontal lobes will occasionally try to release a burst of electrical chemical energy in a mental emergency, like this particular situation. Okay? It's sort of like when you put your hand out to protect yourself when you're being threatened.
Yeah.
Your brain does this electrochemically the same way. And this electromagnetic radiation, which was produced by your frontal lobes, can be picked up by MRI and PET scans. And in this instance, because you had your camera on all the time, and since this was a particularly disturbing topic, the radiation from your frontal lobes was strong enough to cause an interference pattern in the video camera, which is also sensitive to electrical magnetic radiation. You know, if you put a magnet up to a television tuber, you can see the distortion in that. Sure. And if you look at the image, the distort image portion of it exactly occurs over that portion of your head which contains your frontal lobes. So, because that's the only part of your brain that produces enough psychic energy that can be picked up by a simple device like a video camera.
Well, what you said makes sense. And for those who heard your program the other night, and you described the three main areas of the brain, that indeed was the area that you said produced exactly this kind of thing.
Yeah. And it doesn't occur in the back part of your brain, the threat. It originates and is computed in your reptile brain. Your reptile brain can fear and negative thoughts. And yeah, you're living, there was a lot of negative mental activity because of the topic you were discussing.
Absolutely.
Which is, of course, you talk, when you think of Satanism and stuff, well, you're going to be using your reptile brain to compute that information. And it was like, at a certain point, your frontal lobe said, enough, we need to protect ourselves from this. And there was this burst of frontal lobe activity, which you may not have solved your problem, but it was a protective measure.
So when the frontal lobe started smoking.
Yeah, exactly it. And like, in the same way that an X-ray is kind of fuzzy, if you ever look at an X-ray picture, they're not perfectly clear. The image produced as a radiation from your frontal lobes is not, it's not a really perfectly sharp image. It's more like heat radiation, electromagnetic radiation. And when I saw your picture, I mean, I didn't even have to think about what it was. It was just, click, And then it said, oh, there it was. This is what it is.
All right, Neil, thanks a million. I really appreciate the input. Thank you.
Okay.
And take care. We will, of course, have you on again. That's Neil Slade. Neil's talking to us about the brain. Back to Dale Kazmarek. Aha, you see, I got it. In just one moment. Well, as a matter of fact, no, let us do that right now. Dale Kazmarek, I'm getting your name right now. My question to you is a real doozer, and it's not an easy answer. Dale, what is the ghost?
Well, the ghost, my interpretation, is a disembodied spirit of a once living person. And there are many reasons that why the person's spirit has not, moved on to the spirit world where it belongs. There are many obstacles in its way. Normally, it's due to an untimely death or something such as murder or suicide, something that's person's here one minute, gone the next. Perfect example of that would be the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze. He was mugged, stabbed, and killed by a mugger. His spirits, he thought he was his real body, was running after his perpetrator and tried to capture him. When he came back, he saw his body being held by his fiancée. He was a ghost. He was earthbound for a time. There are two main categories, though, that I like to break down ghosts into, and for lack of a better term, I call them smart ghosts and dumb ghosts. A dumb ghost would be my interpretation of what's called a residual haunting effect. In other words, a particularly tragic or traumatic event has taken place, such as this murder or suicide, is then replayed over and over again, maybe in the same place, at the same time, or maybe an anniversary date or something of that nature. Like running a videotape in a loop over and over and over again. You do the same thing. There's no real intelligence behind this. It's simply like watching an old movie over and over again.
Do we have souls?
I believe we do.
All right. The eternally important question for me is whether some souls actually are trapped here on Earth, or whether what we are observing is this endless tape loop replay, which is sort of a weak echo of the life that was, but not really the soul that's trapped endlessly, hellishly repeating whatever horrible end sequence occurred to it. This is, for me, a very, very important question, and for everybody.
Well, that's where the second category of the ghost comes in, the smart ghost. That's where you actually have interaction between the living and the person that has passed on, the deceased person. You may have a communication. You actually may be able to recognize that person as somebody you knew while he or she was alive. There may be some sort of interaction verbally, even sometimes in touching of the body. I like to call them visitation apparitions because they sometimes seem to come back to locations where they had a good time or they had happy memories. And I do believe that there are actual souls or spirits of these people that sometimes do not even wish to go to the next world because they're just frightened or they just wish to hang on to physical life or memories, emotions, things that have happened in the past, rather than going to something that's strange, unusual, and maybe frightening for them as well.
Speaking of pass on, I may have destroyed my own website with the I can't bring it up. We've done that a lot lately. I notice it wouldn't even come up right now, so folks, if we murdered the website again, I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. The radio program Dale is growing faster than the website bandwidth is, and we're in a good place too. Anyway, so your answer really is it may be both.
Yes. It's very often, the most often reported type of visual apparition is simply the residual haunting, where there may be trace elements of this emotion or traumatic event that has sort of imprinted itself in the fabric of time and space. And for some reason, we don't understand the conditions or the physics behind it. It simply replays itself over and over again, like winding a tape through a loop, a constant endless loop. aren't that many, but there are many examples of where there may be actual interaction between spirits and fluid.
I've heard there is scientific research going on now, Dale, that says that windows, crystals, even inert things like wood, plastic, actually have memories. Have you been hearing about that?
Oh, yes, for quite a number of years. Most often what we seem to encounter in our studies is family heirlooms, antiques, personal belongings, things that had sentimental value to that person who was the owner of that person. Sometimes psychics can then, you've heard the instance where psychic can pick up an object and tell you everything about that person who held that object. It's called psychometry.
Absolutely, I know a person who does it.
That's pretty much the same thing as having a ghost basically attach itself to a personal heirloom, an antique, or even, for instance, a whole house.
Do you know Daniel Brinkley? Or know of him?
No, I don't know.
He is a man who was struck by lightning. He was actually dead for 26 minutes, flatline. And when he came back, and he did come back, he had psychic abilities that you wouldn't believe. That was an instant shock to his brain. And over the years, since that lightning strike, they have faded. But he still has very, very strong psychic ability. And I had this man over to my home, I don't know, a few months ago. And without telling you what it was about, I'll tell you I handed him a piece of paper that had been written to me. And all he did was touch it. He described the person. He described their home. He described their car. He described what was around their home. And he did this absolutely, completely, accurately. And it stood there on the back of my neck up. Now, that would seem to be the kind of psychic ability that is imparted to somebody through some sort of trauma, in the brain. But there are others who are natural and do it all their life. Is that correct?
Yes, there are some people who are actually born with their psychic ability that it doesn't seem to fade. It seems to actually get stronger as they get older. Sometimes they have to fine-tune it a bit, maybe going through, development classes of some kind to develop their psychic abilities or attend classes in that manner. But there are people that are actually born with the gift of discernment, the gift of psychometry, clairvoyance, ESP, much more so than random chance would dictate.
Do you have any hint what brings on this kind of person? Does it have to do, for example, with their parents? Is there any commonality in the lives of people who demonstrate this ability?
It does seem to have something to do with your ancestors. It may have something to do with heredity, because most often you do find entire families that are very psychic, while others don't tend to have the same experience. Whether it's in the genes, whether it's something in the chemical, biological, the brain itself, it's passed on from one generation to the next through genes. I'm not sure, but it does seem to follow that pattern of being passed on from one generation to the next.
Perhaps you would be willing, obviously, in all the years you've been investigating all of this, you have no doubt run into some extremely interesting situations and stories. Pick one out and tell us.
Okay. The most unusual case that I had a chance to work on was one that's right here in Illinois, a small town called Orland Hills, Illinois. It began quite innocently by getting a call from a psychic that I do work with on a number of occasions. She told me of this home where fires were breaking out, where there was a sulfur smell, sort of like rotten eggs that would build up in this location. The fire department had been called numerous times to come out here to determine what was going on in this home. She wanted me to get involved. We were both invited to the Orland Hills Fire Department in a closed meeting room. And sitting in front of us were two state fire marshals that had over 60 years experience in combustible materials. There was a chief of police, an arson expert from the local fire department, and a few other people had been involved. What they had told us in this room, basically, and it does, I'm not the kind of person that normally gets scared, but it did raise a few hairs in the back of my neck. Because they had been called to this home well over 60 different times within a 2 or 3 month period for just those occurrences. Fires breaking out, plugs that were plugged in to a microwave. Literally, the plug was melting in the wall. This sulfur smell would just permeate the entire building to the point where it was, you have to get out of the house, it just was too nauseous.
That's strong.
That's strong. This home was only a few years old at the time. It was a brand new home in a brand new subdivision. They tried every possible natural way to find out what was going on, including calling in Commonwealth Edison, the electric company. They called in the gas company. They called in the builders. They called in people from all different areas to try to figure out what was going on. So there were power surges, subterranean gas that might be causing this problem. Everything was negative. It was checking out to be perfectly normal.
All right, we are at the bottom of the hour, and we'll pick this up as we come back. Well, the webpage revived itself, so you can go up there and take a look at that photograph now. It is back. About a half hour there, I just couldn't get in, probably net traffic. It's www.artbell.com, and it's the studio cam shot you're going to want to look at. Any analysis, opinion is welcome. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast. Is with us from near Chicago. Dale investigates ghosts. In essence, I guess, I'm not even going to name our estimate as a ghostbuster. I wonder if he is. I wonder if he really is a ghostbuster. That's a good question. We'll ask him. Once again, here's Dale Kismerick from Chicago, near Chicago. Dale, you were telling us a story. And I'm sure you have many, many to tell, but I do want to ask you this. You're an investigator. Are you also what you would consider to be a ghostbuster, one who goes in and rids places of these problems?
Well, in the strictest sense of the term, ghostbuster, I would probably say no, because if you compare that with what they did in the movie, I don't have their kind of equipment. They don't actually, try to grab them, carry them around, and, put them in just storage in here. What we attempt to do actually is to, first of all, thoroughly investigate the site, find out if there is something relevant to haunting or ghostly phenomenon going on in the premises, and then bring along or bring with us gifted people such as psychics or clairvoyants who can then make some form of communication with the ghost and simply talk to the ghost, just like I'm talking to you, more or less, and convince that spirit that in fact it is dead, it doesn't belong here, and we best just move on, just through its own accord, rather than use a exorcism or a or some sort of bizarre ritual to get that ghost out. We try to simply talk to the ghost in some way to let them know that they don't belong here. Hey, buddy, you're dead. You know, you should be showing way out.
I once had a fellow on the show who claimed, and this is as way out as you can get, that he had modified, you know what a bug zapper is?
Yes.
He had several bug zappers arranged in some strange way that he did try. He claims he trapped a spirit. Now, you said yourself that there are electromagnetic anomalies that seem to occur frequently around manifestations, right?
That's correct.
So, technically, one could imagine constructing a device that if you could cause a manifestation within it and turn on a strong electromagnetic field, if you're crazy enough to try this, you might actually, if the movement is electromagnetic, you might somehow manage to trap an entity. What do you think?
Well, if that was to be done, it probably would have to be a concentric circle. In other words, totally not just, it would have to be three-dimensional. In other words, the ghost would not be able to escape by going up, by going down. Right. It would have to be totally encompass this ghost or this being.
We could do that. I mean, I know enough about electronics to know that you could create a field, a very strong 360-degree magnetic field. That's what we're talking about here. And that you could activate it at the flip of a switch. Now, I don't know if it would be a good idea to try it. I'm just saying that technically it seems to me that if the mode of travel or manifestation is electromagnetic, that you might trap it in that manner. Would you do that kind of an experiment, or would you say that doesn't sound like such a good idea?
It would be a very interesting experiment to try. I would not rule that out, but again, there are several problems involved to begin with. Number one, you'd have to be able to locate the ghost, find out where the ghost is, and then get that field around that ghost. Number one, if it's invisible, you're not going to be able to see it. You might be able to track it with meters or other devices, but you might not be able to know exactly when this ghost is in this,
You could literally build a room, a full room, that would, or even go to a room where there are frequent manifestations and set up such a trap. I just wonder if it would really be a good idea. It's an interesting thing to, concept to think about.
It certainly would answer a lot of questions that we've had about spirits from all along. And number one, do they really exist, which I do believe they do. And being able to get one, again, you have to know the frequency of this operation, what frequency that they're working on. It's a lot of unanswered questions, but I think it's worth the scientific experimentation.
You work in graveyards. Do spirits remain near their deteriorating physical bodies? That's a hard little thought.
Usually not. And that's what I often tell people, that if I give them a scenario like, if you died and came back as a ghost, where would you want to hang out?
Oh,
certainly not in the graveyard.
Oh, no.
That's why I believe most graveyards are not haunted. I believe that most locations where ghosts are often seen or experienced are places that, again, that they recollect happy memories, where they had a good time. This can be a business, this can be a restaurant, this can be a bar. We even have haunted bowling alleys here in Chicago that are
haunted bowling alleys?
Haunted bowling alleys.
Somebody who probably just missed a 300 game by one pin or something?
Could be.
That'll bring you back. Oh my God, haunted bowling alley. That's interesting.
Well, I can't give the actual name of the location out, but I know.
Please don't. I don't want to hurt anybody's business.
But I did work on a case once in a haunted bowling alley in the far southwest side of Chicago, where ashtrays would fly around, where maintenance workers working late at night claimed to have had encounters where they would hear mumbled voices inside the offices that were locked already for that evening. You would see the garbage can lids swing as though somebody had just plopped something in the garbage can. There's nobody in this building. The devices that wax and oil the lanes would turn themselves off and on midway through their track going through here. They were checked out. They were not shorts. It was a perfect operating condition. This went on for a number of years and suddenly it just died out.
Suddenly just died out. Is that a frequent occurrence? In other words, do apparitions or ghosts or poltergeists or this kind of activity, does it suddenly frequently stop of its own?
Poltergeist activity is much more associated with a rapid deterioration and an abrupt stop because you're dealing basically with, again, a person causing, for the most part, these objects to move around through their own psychokinesis or mind over matter. So when you're dealing with a real person, such as a poltergeist case, that person wants you to find out who is moving the objects around with their own power of their mind. It's more like a mental temper tantrum. You can get to that person may simply need some counseling or some help or something. Phenomenon may stop very abruptly. In hauntings where you have an external force like a ghost or entity of some kind, these things can sometimes last for just a few weeks, sometimes years, and sometimes centuries. There are reports still to this day in England of Queen Anne's ghost, Queen Anne Boleyn's ghost, and the ghost of King Henry VIII, other very colorful characters that apparently haunt their castles which they once lived in back centuries ago.
All right. Well, it seems like in all the years that I've done interviews about ghosts, when people are killed and die suddenly, murdered, hit by a car when they weren't expecting it, suicides, that sort of thing, that seems to bring some sort of action too, or the greater likelihood of something lingering on Earth. And now, it seems to me, you know something, Dale? I don't know if there's a heaven and a hell. I rather imagine there is, but I can't think of anything that would be more hellish than to die and to remain here, seeing things progress and move on and seeing the people you know and the places you're familiar with and not being able to interact with them at all. That would be pretty hellish, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes. And that's, sometimes the ghost that is involved with this scenario doesn't know how to get to the other side, to cross over. Or sometimes they will themselves back simply because they don't want to leave. They want to stick around and they want be helpful, be a part of the family, even though they really can't. And it's very saddening because they see their friends grow old, they die, and people, it's like you said, a very hellish situation. And that's why I believe that places that are haunted, the spirits that are in these homes, businesses, restaurants, bowling alleys, whatever, are making the noise, are making the attempts to attract attention to the fact that they are there.
That they are there.
They need some sort of help. They're sort of reaching out the best way they can by scaring people half to death sometimes, bring somebody in, finally show them the way out. I've noticed that very often in investigating homes where I can talk to people on the phone, you can hear things crashing in the background. You can hear the woman in hysterics saying, get over here, something's going on. Yeah, get over there. Quiet. Because they got the person they wanted to get there, whether it be me or somebody else.
All right, another thing. Movie after movie after movie, Hollywood and ghosts, they get some of it right. Young teenage girls seem to produce something around them. Maybe it's, the changes they're going through. Maybe it's their incredible emotional state. Maybe it's, I don't know what it is. I'm stabbing in the dark here. But for some reason, young teenage girls seem to manifest a lot of activity around them, poltergeist activity, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
How come?
Well, we don't really know. There are a lot of possible explanations, and a lot of this goes back to the personality of the individual. If that person is very introverted, whether she be very self-centered, a lot of peer pressure, very soft-spoken person, takes a lot of stuff in, doesn't let a lot of stuff come back out. It's like overcharging a battery, just charging. eventually it's going to discharge, it's going to explode or something, and that's when you have this psychic explosion of poltergeist activity. Going back to that case I was talking about earlier, all these things happen surrounding a 14-year-old girl.
Oh, really?
And she had to be in the room, she had to be in the home for these things to happen. But she wasn't near to where these things happened. She was just in the home somewhere. But she was removed from the environment. They went to the grandmother's house, stayed there for a while. The phenomenon stopped very abruptly in the home, but then continued at the grandmother's house. Small breakage of objects, things falling down, etc.
Was she in any way disturbed psychologically? Do you know?
We don't know that for a fact. We do know that this happened during a holy time around Easter. These things seem to culminate around times of great holiness, Christmas, etc. She was going to be coming into her first communion confession. Probably a lot of pressure put on her, and I think this kind of just was like the straw that broke the camel's back, and these things began happening. The baseline of this whole thing was they had to tear the house down completely. It was deemed unsafe to live in. People were given a settlement. They moved elsewhere because
there are laws, aren't there, in many states that if you have a haunted house, you must, in a sale, disclose that to the buyer, or you've not made a deal.
9.5 New York, perfect example of that. The woman had moved into a house, put on a deposit, later found out the house was inhabited by no more than 6 or 7 different ghosts.
Right.
Took it to court, and it was a landmark decision for the woman. She got her deposit back because the woman failed to disclose the fact that the house was well known to be haunted.
Well, now, how I fail to understand how there can be a legal precedent for that, for somebody to get their money back because a place is haunted. You would think that legally, you would have to establish that the haunting is real and not the figment of somebody's imagination. And so you would in fact then have a legal ruling that you're damn right, this place is haunted, this person didn't disclose it. I mean, that's a legal precedent. How did that, in court, how do they establish that?
I wish I knew. It was convincing enough for the judge to rule in the favor of the defendant in that case and get her out of that home, get her deposit back. So there must have been some sort of precedent that they put forth in front of the judge that convinced him to make that ruling.
That is remarkable, and that law, I think, is present in many states, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
We are going to get the lines open here shortly, and I'm going to allow people to ask you questions. What would you say, you investigate this kind of thing, what for you was the scariest moment you've had?
Oh, first of all, I should probably say I don't get scared too often. But I will say one that still to this day leaves me kind of tingling. I was doing an investigation in a cemetery called Southwest City, Missouri, called Evergreen Cemetery. There were reports of a strange, semi-transparent figure of a woman that would be seen there almost nightly. I went there to investigate. I figured this had to be some form of optical illusion. Ghosts don't appear at the same time. They're very spontaneous, very random. I got there, could not find anybody to actually show me the location. Went there myself, began looking around. This is about maybe 8 o'clock in the evening, and summer evenings, some will still off for another half hour, 45 minutes or so. Began to see a strange mist beginning to form between a small tombstone and a tree. It wasn't ground fog, it wasn't smoke, it wasn't haze, it wasn't the humidity in the air. It began darting around rapidly between a tree and a tombstone. Some parts were more translucent, other parts were more visually opaque. I said, well, I must at least get this on film, see what I can maybe analyze it later, of course. Snap a picture of it, pull the camera away from my eye, and the mist did not react or burn away or dissipate in a normal fashion as you think ground fog would. The best way to describe it is you pull a cork out of a bathtub. It just kind of spiraled down a little white tornado into the ground about 35 feet away from me. And my bottom jaw kind of hit my heel at that point. It spiraled just feet.
Sort of into the ground.
Exactly. When I got the film back. Unfortunately, nothing showed up on the film as far as a mist, but the entire area where this mist would have been on the film was sort of bathed in this kind of eerie blue light. It's very unusual for the film. It was the only picture on the film, on that roll of film, that had anything unusual on it. So,
Okay, but you saw this with your own eyes.
Exactly.
What? I mean, you stood there after you watched this thing swirl into the ground, and what? I mean, what did you think you saw?
Well, I wasn't sure. It intrigued me and scared me both at the same time. I wanted to kind of sit down, rationalize. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I still don't know exactly what I saw. I guess in the strictest sense of the term, I guess it could be called a ghost because it was an unrecognizable form. There wasn't no shape to it. It wasn't like an apparition. It didn't have a form. It was just a strange collection of cloudy gas.
All right, now there we go. So I can't help it now. The photograph that I've got up there, how was it different from that in substance?
It wasn't much different at all.
Really?
It was not much different at all.
Really?
It just might have been a larger mass, number one, and it was in motion. It was there, visible for, I would say, probably 30, 45 seconds.
Now you've got to remember this photograph, though of course I didn't see it until I saw it in the photograph.
Right.
But that is a still photograph grabbed at that second of 1:26 and 21 seconds in the morning. It could have been in some kind of motion. I have no way of knowing. But you're saying it was kind of like that.
Exactly. That's how those photographs are very often taken. You're basically what you're doing with a camera, whether it be a video camera, a 35 millimeter, an SX70 or whatever, is you're freezing a moment of time and space.
Right.
And then you can look at that moment you just frozen in your hand. Whatever's there is there. It may have been there in a blink of an eye. 1 second it was gone, next second it was there.
Yeah.
Etc. It's just, that's how many of these photographs are taken, in a twinkling of an eye.
So really, a lot of your research has been in interpretation of these photographs.
Yeah, interpretation of photographs and evidence that we've collected during investigative work.
You've got a website, we've got a link. How many photographs are up on your website?
I believe the current total right now is 12 or 13 that I have, and these are some of the best ones. I have a large collection. I probably have about several hundred that I do have, but I've tried to put the best on from the very beginning. And most of these show either some form of human form, semi-transparent image, and there are some mists and other strange light formations that were captured with ordinary film.
Okay, when we get back, maybe you can describe some of those for us. And, not everybody has a computer, of course. So we'll describe some, and the others, they can go up to my website, jump over to yours, and take a look, because that's what we're going to be talking about. Dale Kasparek is my guest from an area near Chicago. He's not a ghost buster. He's a ghost investigator. I'm Martel, and this is Coast to Coast AM. I'm Martel. Of course, with us, minimal show from Philadelphia to she's all the way over here on the West Coast in Oregon. 3,000 miles north from Linda. Well, we've got her. She'll be followed this evening by Dolores Canyon, Hammond, and the subject will be Nostradamus. Her book, a trilogy, Conversations with Nostradamus. Appropriate for this part of the year, as will Linda's report made, as you will discern in August. An award-winning documentary producer, investigator into crop circles and animal mutilations now for years, early on an environmental reporter, and now a general science reporter for us as well. Here from Portland, Oregon, quite a change of venue, is Linda Walton. Linda, welcome.
Well, hi, Art. I have been in Portland since the very beginning images for reminding myself into the reality volume 2, of which it all goes well. Today is Nationwide Book Tour is signed by March of 1998, so Pray for me.
I do pray for you, Linda. Books are like having babies.
They really are. So that's why I'm here, and that's what's coming in the spring, I hope. And tonight is December 21st, the beginning of the winter solstice period, where the days begin to get longer again.
Oh, yes.
And as I was watching, cutting our down afternoon on swimming pool, we're in the river in Portland, I began to think about the fact that the Egyptians used to bring greenery to their homes and to their solstice to encourage the gods to renew the vigor of the garden cycle. And watching them over the 2 years that the ancient and pagan rituals for earth and renewal were trying to celebrate Christmas and Christmases again. And I've been thinking back over the past 12 years of stories that I've reported on Green Iron Coast to Coast since that thing. 12 years ago, and Thomas. Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Art.
No, that's about right. It's not like a hell lot. I mean, I'm going to reminisce with you, I suppose. So.
Yes, okay. Well, 12 months ago, that common male boss is a person of the sun and became the biggest, highest subsidized soul to come to our solar system since the great comet of 1811. By large residents of the Middle Coast created a social uproar when they committed mass suicide to allegedly reach another intelligence camouflaged by the comet. Astronomers insisted that Neobos was only a comet, and the first one ever seen was plain tail. One of the tails is now turned out as being entirely exploding atoms, probably emitted from more dust mixed with that Neobos comet than ever or mostly usually seen with comets. That's comets usually don't have that much dust. Also last March, Rain identified life in sea formations were seen by thousands of people living over Arizona, and a week later over parts of Ohio, the green people did not learn about, but were very similar to what happened over Arizona and was from history. Now this December is ending with reports of more strong phenomena. Multiple fireballs falling in Bogota, Colombia, South America, and apparent huge rock meteorites plunging into the isotopal Greenland that we talked about on Coast to Coast.
Thank you for the word appearance.
Yeah, that's right, because we might have to wait until next summer to find out what's there in, because this whatever it is may got out in the ice of England.
Or until it falls out.
Well, not again, there's a lot of prophecies to an art, so we have a question to ask at the word canon. And between the astronomical bookends of the year, many other events and discoveries have left the residue for me about 1997. It is both alarming and I am also excited, possibly about the future. First, Leonardo has been found in 1997 from a growing number of scientists that I have interviewed over the years who all say the same thing. More and more of our data from every part of the globe indicates an increasingly rapid deterioration of our planet's ability to sustain life in the face of human population inflation. And your phrase, Art, the quickening, is a good description because it is an acceleration of change, both good and bad. In 1997, we had some sharks, emotions, and wild honeybees, the pollen plants are facing extinction. For water organisms, bacteria with millions of fish from now into Florida and they bring people sick. Many diseases must form in killing coral and tropical fish off northern coast and provoking large life-threatening changes in sea turtles throughout the world. Increased UV light and globally hitting over has been killing amphibians and plankton in the ocean, threatening the food chain. In 1997, more rainforests were cut down than any previous year, rapidly destroying natural habitats and increasing the extinction rate of plant and animal species now estimated to be at least 25,000 a year. That means between last Christmas and this Christmas, at least 25,000 species of Earth's life disappeared forever.
Oh.
Now, what will it take for the living species to wake up to the limitations of all this? What will it take to make all players realize that the air and water are not guaranteed to last or to protect them? The 1997 was also an exciting year, a revolutionary breakthrough in science. A headline on the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer dated Thursday, August 8th, 1996, more than a year ago, had said signs of life on Mars, question mark, some scientists sure and some are doubtful. And as 96 went into 97, more scientists were coming forward saying that they thought that they also had evidences of globules in some of the meteorites that might have come from Mars that looked like possibly bacteria. And even though scientists have to announce it was premature, Cornell University astronomer who now is modesty, but at the time said, quote, "This is the most provocative and provocative piece of evidence for life beyond Earth. If the results are verified, it is a turning point in human history, suggesting that life exists not on just two planets in one concrete solar system, but throughout this magnificent universe." And since Dr. Sagan said those words, by July 1997, the Mars Pathfinder and its low-loading machine landed on the red planet. It was the first time since we go back over 20 years. The rover did follow orders to inspect Martian rocks, and the first 5 turned out to be so much alike and so high in silicon content, the scientists were surprised. One theory is that maybe the rocks are left over from volcanic eruption. This fall, the Mars Global Surveyor was started aerobreaking its way down to a shallow polar orbit to photograph a topographic map of the Martian surface. Maybe take another closer look or a wide shot of the Cydonia region and that strange phase of the pyramid. And the next orbiter lander pair is set for launch in December 1998 and January 1999. As humankind issued its way toward orientation to Mars in the next century, it will help survive what we're doing to our own planet. Further on in space, our Earth profile ran some astonishing photographs of Jupiter's moon Europa, showing the past ice surface might have a liquid ocean underneath, and maybe even life form.
They also said in one of the past films, if there's not someone else out there, it sure is a big waste of space.
Yes, I would agree. And on Earth, 1997 was the first year for clown sheep and other animals. Something that has come up quite a bit in the discussions of people who allege intelligence is not being intelligent. It was a shock to the human psyche, the ability to clone animals from another animal. And it's a foreshadowing, perhaps, of the future many of us are probably not ready for. Immediate public reaction were to begin cloning, especially as humans. U.S. President Bill Clinton proclaimed that, quote, "each human life is unique, born of a miracle that reaches beyond laboratory science," unquote.
A December 18th AP story says now, not only have they cloned, but they now have cloned lambs with human genes.
That's what I was leading to.
Oh, I see. Right.
Exactly. But I'm glad that you brought it up. That is so important. The director of the U.S. National Institute of Health, Harold Vargas, told the Congressional Committee after the first cloning announcement that despite negative reaction to the idea of cloning human beings, society and some groups decide that human cloning is acceptable for certain conditions, such as providing new organs for children for infertile companies, infertile couples. And this means, what you just mentioned, the new cloned sheep that we're now carry part of a human gene that will hopefully be able to provide medical treatment for certain disease complexes in the sheep milk. So we have now moved into using the cloning of animals with certain human genes to try to provide us medicine.
Well, we'll either get something good like that or Planet of the Lambs.
I am going to opt for a positive evolution. And we might be able to find life now, but we still don't know exactly the hour genetic formulas work. In 1997, scientists in Germany and the United States reported that DNA comparisons between preserved bones of Neanderthal and modern humankind show there is no relationship. So who or what is the immediate precursor to colonialism and thinking statement? That is still one of the great mysteries as we evolve into the 21st century. Revolutions get everywhere, from medicine to technology, and one of the most amazing stories reported in the December issue of Discovery was headlined, "Left there no matter. Einstein taught us that matter is just another form of energy." Now, physicists have for the first time created bits of matter and the meaning of life.
May I ask you a personal question? Do you think it's rather more likely that people find the missing link or the equivalent of the obelisk?
In the full book, Waiting Above Reality, Volume 2, which came out in March, I'm actually trying to deal with what appear to be growing implications that our history, our forebears may actually be linked to the manipulation of DNA and already involving finance. And that was Leonard, the basically linked is not what we're expecting to find, understand somewhere. And that the potential is that the missing link has to do with another intelligence interacting with our planet. And his family prepared, ready, and desiring to understand more about what I think of as the forbidden history of the planet.
I don't think so.
Well, maybe they're not.
I mean, some are evolved and prepared for it, but I tend to agree with both of this report. I mean, the scientists, all the paradigms, the religious institutions, and on and on and on. Are they prepared? No.
You may be right, but all my life I really have wanted to know the truth about everything on this planet. And I think this is one of the big areas that we're going to learn more and more about as we go into the next year, 2 to 3, and into the next century. And it also ties in the fact where the special, the beginning to emerge in planetary about the relationship of matter to energy and energy to matter, and how much life there is through the cosmos. The story that I was mentioning by Jeffrey Richard in the December issue of Discovery magazine is such an astonishing story because they were able to take into the Einstein squared the famous formula of Einstein and basically reverse it. They were able to take the motion of matter, antimatter, annihilation energy at the state of the Earth corridor. And with the work that Gamma was done, they were able to make a blaze of energy and make matter photons. And it reminded me of closing up tonight and the end of this year until later tonight, 1998. Although the amazing growth penetrating inside our sense into the true reality of things, predicted by David Bohm. In theoretical physics, which was written in the important books, and the most important was physics and the implicate order. This is from an interview that was done and was recorded in a book edited by Renee Weber, and he said, quote, "Mass is a phenomenon of connecting light rays which go back and forth, or freezing them into a pattern. The matter, as it were, is condensed or frozen light. That's me, art, that's me, the chairs, the plants, everything. Light is not merely electromagnetic waves, but in a distinct other kind of waves that are as speed. Therefore, all matter is a presentation of light is a pattern moving back and forth at average speed which I love to see at once.
Well, I believe they have recently observed the dying of stars and the gases produced, and then the beginning of the birth of new stars from those same gases.
That's right, and that matter producing matter. What we said the Princeton has done, and what David Tyler is talking about, is the conversion of energy to matter and matter back to energy, which means of light, which is really remarkable because long ago there was a test of this called the Bell experiment, in which they were experimenting with photons in a laboratory, and they were testing the spin of the photons. It's been introduced many times, and recently they did further evolution of this test, and what they found was the spin, the relationship of the photons, no matter what they did in the experiment, no matter where, no matter how far apart they took them, a photon acted as every photon knew what every other photon is doing. The implication is the universe is connected to all of the
Hold it right there. We'll do it again. Once again, we're going to finish more here in review. We are all light. That's the telephone. And there indeed, we are all light. That caused me to make things great. One of the first words, like that there be light. Linda?
And now scientists at Princeton are saying now let there be matter made from light. And we don't really focus more about this very profound quote from David Bohm, the theoretical physicist. When he was talking about his idea that all matter is essentially condensed or frozen light, he concluded his thoughts in this sentence. We can say that when it is time to light, we are coming to the fundamental activity which existence has its ground. And on that thought, we go now from 97, a very accelerated revolutionary kind of year to 1998, with really unknown. I'm going to try in January to do interviews for Greenland and Mikey Pokemon Coast that will focus on the new transportation of photons that appears to be something like a teleportation of photon storage. And another is the scientists on the East Coast that I talked to, who has written a book that is suggesting that there are an infinite number of universes, and that we are only in one of those universes, and like a series of bubbles that are thrown out over space and time. And this, I think, part is sort of the hallmark of what we're going to be evolving into more and more, because this is the new definition of what we are, where we came from, and what our relationship is with matter, the universe, and the photon energy which gives life.
Linda, if you would, your contact information.
It is Linda Hall, and my fax number, and I would welcome any information from any of you on any subject matter ranging from the environment to unusual phenomena in your area. My fax number is area code 215-491-9842. 215-491-9842. For those of you who would like to write, it is Post Office Box 300 in Jameson, K-A-M-I-S-O-N, Pennsylvania, zip code 18929. Again, that's Post Office Box 300, Jameson, Pennsylvania, zip code 18929. And I, to all of our dear listeners, I wish you a Merry Christmas and the happiest year, and may 1998 be a wonderful year and not one as catastrophic as possibly today.
Linda, I will speak with you on a program next time in 1998. Maybe so.
Yeah, that's one.
Take care.
All right.
All right, that's Linda Moulton Howe, and there you go. May it not be a year that will be as catastrophic as prophesized. We thought to end here with, isn't it? Now, Dolores Cannon has become perhaps the world's most unlikely expert on the prophecies of Nostradamus. She is a retired naval wife from Arkansas, Alabama, Arkansas. She was nearly 50 years old when she began experimenting with hypnosis and past life regression. And the results were, to say the least, quite spectacular. Working through several different subjects, Dolores was able to establish communication with the prophet Nostradamus. His revelations and their impact on our own time are both fascinating and, at times, somewhat frightening. She is well known throughout the world, considers herself a regressionist and psychic researcher, who specializes in the recovery and cataloging of lost knowledge. She has appeared all over the place, including a current affair in Australia, Ancient Mysteries of the World, a 2-hour special on CBS, Ancient Prophecies, a 2-hour special on NBC, Encounters, an hour special on Fox, interviewed on CNN's International Entertainment News. I could go on and on and on. All the networks, she's been all over the place, but right now she is here. So, without any further ado, here is Dolores Cannon. Dolores, welcome to the program.
Hello, Art.
Hi there.
Okay, one thing I wanted to say, I was listening to Linda on there, and, you know, I've written 10 books. A lot of the things she is talking about, I've also researched. Showing, you know, feeding of the planet Earth, and that we are light. So this is amazing that this is all, we're all seem to be on the same track.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And like you said, I consider myself a reporter, a researcher of lost knowledge, and I like to find out all the strange and the unusual.
Well, there's plenty of lost knowledge out there, Dolores. Why don't you tell us how you began with Nostradamus?
Okay, so I was thinking, because I have written 10 books, you don't want to focus on Nostradamus tonight, so that's what we'll do. All right, first of all, I want to make it very clear that I am not a channeler and I am not a psychic in my own right. I am a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist, and I have been doing past life regression, past life therapy for almost 20 years. This is where you take the person into the other lifetime to find the answers to problems in this lifetime. You probably have many people that do that on your show.
I have, and I have a question already. May I ask it?
Sure, I guess.
There has been a great controversy among scientists, among psychiatrists, and others regarding hypnosis, period, particularly regression and the false memory syndrome and all the rest of it. In other words, whether somebody like yourself would hypnotize somebody and, in effect, send them in the direction that they want them to go, and so setting their fantasy loose, and then suggesting what they want to hear and getting in back what they want to hear. How do you address that? It's very important because it's basic.
Yeah, and I know I have heard those arguments, you know, and I've heard them all over the world, even in England. I just came back from working on it over there. But what I want to say is that if you are a reputable hypnotist, you will not give the person, and you will not try to direct them in any way. And people that know my work will realize I bend over and backwards the other way, not to me. Because I know that the very first thing that the skeptics say, oh, you said the thoughts and such, and that is what made them thinking. Why just allow the person to tell their own story, and then I try to relate that to their life. Most of the time I allow them to do it themselves. But there is a lot of controversy out there right now, what they call the false memory syndrome, where they have implanted the memories, especially about childish experiences that have been very bad. But I think these are people who, I don't want to say they're unethical, but they're definitely going about it the wrong way. Because if the memory is not there, and you suggest that caused a great deal of harm.
You may recall a recent 60 Minutes piece on a doctor who had some lady over a period of years convinced she had about 120 some odd personalities.
Yes, I saw that. It was on, I think, the last Sunday, and that was awful because it was definitely the hypnotist that was doing it. The doctor, I can't imagine what kind of reason he had to do it, but he certainly ruined the woman's life.
Well, I believe the medical bill in that case is into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah, that might be what he was getting out of it, but she certainly wasn't helping the person. In my early years of doing this, up until the last few years, I never charged for anything that I did. And I would travel many, many miles to work with people. The main idea, I was trying to help the person. And that was the main motive. And along the way, these different stories and historical things that I've written about came out.
Lawrence, when did you first discover that you could actually regress somebody? That must have been a big aha moment when you could regress them prior to their birth.
Okay, I'll tell you what happened. I first did hypnosis. Actually, go back into the 1960s. And practicing almost 20 years ago, but they actually went back in the 1960s. In those days, there weren't any books out or anything to tell you what to do. And my husband was really the hypnotist. Even though we were in the Navy, he was doing it more or less as a hobby, but he was working with doctors on the base to help people with losing weight and things like that. So totally by accident, in the 1960s, while he was working with a woman about weight loss, he suddenly just went back into a lifetime of 1920s.
Oh, my.
And we're sitting there thinking, well, what's going on now? We didn't have any idea what was happening, but it was very fascinating. That's one thing, I've always had a great curiosity. If something happens like that, instead of getting frightened, I always get very curious.
Lawrence, what kinds of things did she say that gave you that first aha moment? My God, we're in the 20s.
Yeah, that's it, because she was a woman. Oh, let me see, I guess she was in her 30s or maybe early 40s in the 1960s. And suddenly she's talking about being in a big black car in Chicago. And, we said, well, but what year is this? And she said, what do you mean, silly? It's 1926. And we're thinking, wait a minute here.
Right.
We're definitely not in Kansas anymore.
Right.
Right. Same goes,
Well, how did you and your husband evaluate that? I mean, it must have challenged everything you thought at the time.
Oh, it did, because, like I said, there were no books out at that time to tell you what was going on. The only book that was printed then was The Search for Bright Murphy. And that book, when be printed now, would be considered too dull and mundane, boring, but I have many cases like that. But in those days, that was the only book that was out. And then later, after this, Jill Stern's book, The Search for the Girl with Blue Eyes, came out. But at the time, there was nothing to tell you what to do, so we were more or less just feeling our way. So out of curiosity, we wanted to see if there was anything else. And she went back to 5 different lifetimes to which she was created. And to me, this was the biggest thing we ever stumbled across. And at the time, people on the Navy base were coming to our house to listen to the latest chapter on the portable recorders you had in those days. They were so big you couldn't even listen. Yes. It was very big, reel-to-reel thing. But we kept the woman anonymous, but they wanted to be so fascinated by what was going on.
Well, the clear implication of all this then is that there is reincarnation.
Oh, yes. So all the things that happened to me have happened by accident. But the way it turned out, anyway, my husband was almost killed, so he was put out of the Navy, and he ended up in Arkansas, on top of a mountain out here. I never thought I was going to be doing anything else but taking care of family like that. But you know how it happens, when all the children leave, and it's like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? I decided to get back into hypnosis because I thought it was so fascinating. So I developed my own technique at that time, and it's very fast, and it puts the person into the deepest possible level of trance, and they go there automatically to the possible level. And I began to do the therapy, and it was just very fascinating because automatically the person would go into a past life without being told to do it. And this is how I've built my practice over all these years. Mostly basically out here, you're just going from place to place, people that wanted to have these sessions. Along the way, all these fascinating stories have come out from the accumulator of evidence, the research.
All right. Are these people who knew the kind of work that you did? Eventually you became well known, of course.
In the beginning, you know, it's just back in the hills here.
I understand.
Yeah.
But do you, again, going back to, I guess, my earlier question, when you get a volunteer, and that volunteer knows the kind of work that you do, would there not be a predisposition on that person's part to explore a past life or past lives? Again, bringing up that basic question.
That maybe they would invent something or what?
That's right.
I don't think so, because the things that have happened, the people are so startled when they hear it, and later they don't even want to listen to the case many times. One of the first cases I had, you know, after I began practicing, was a woman who died of the atomic bomb at Hiroshima as a Japanese man.
Wow.
So that was a very horrible, startling case to investigate.
All right, well, here's where we can jump in and say, here's the proof. In other words, as you take these people back, and you arrest people, and you find details of who they were and what they did in their previous life, it should be verifiable through historic records of all kinds.
Yes, it should be. But, yeah, there's the big but. Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the time, and the only time they had records are in recent history. So even the one in the 1920s, in the beginning, I said, oh, I want to prove this. And
Sure.
I went through all the records, science findings in Chicago, and I thought it would be easy, and it's definitely not. Because even in the 1920s, they didn't have the records we have today. They didn't begin keeping birth records until later. I think it was like the 30s and 40s before a regular thing to keep birth records. So, you know, you can't really find the proof you're looking for. And even if you do, there's always a skeptic out there that will say it doesn't matter. No amount of proof is ever enough for a skeptic.
Do you know Dr. Bruce Goldberg?
Yes, I do. Yes, I mean, we've been on the lecture circuit.
Dr. Goldberg has done quite a bit of work in that area of trying to prove.
Verify, yeah.
And he's done some pretty fascinating stuff.
Well, yeah, I've had several cases that have been brought to my attention where you have been able to do it. But a lot of times you're not able to do it, but the historical facts, not the existence of the person per se, but the historical situation that they lived in. You know what I mean? They're able to report historically what went on. You know, it's very difficult to verify in research in the library. To me, that is proof, because most of these average people, nowadays, they don't even teach geography and history that much in school, like we were taught, you know. Unlike the woman who was a young girl who dropped out of school, and yet she was reporting the life of a Japanese man. And I found that during that part of the war, especially during Hiroshima, there was no record of what the Japanese people went through.
Indeed.
And we were able to get the story of what it was like to be in Japan during the war. And I had Japanese people write to me and say, you are absolutely accurate, that is the way it was.
Yeah, that seems so unlikely to come from a flight of fancy.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So if I can, let me just ask you straight out, are you absolutely, in your own heart, Dolores, convinced that this is a valid scientific path to follow?
I think it is, and surprisingly enough, a lot of the psychologists that I've spoken with, and I've spoken before boards of psychologists, are beginning to method. They want to learn how to do it. They said it doesn't matter if they believe in it or if they believe in it. It helps the person, that's the main thing.
Sure.
So they're beginning to switch over now, too. And that's why I don't really know if it matters if you can prove beyond a doubt the memory helps them in the present life. That's not always helpful. That's really what it's all about. So along the way, I've gotten very good historical books out of it. I mean, that's fascinating.
And then somehow, in pursuit of all this, at some point, you ran into Nostradamus.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to give a little background. It turned out to be more than a little background.
Oh, no, that's quite all
What
right.
happened so that you would understand that it is not a case of channeling at all. It was totally spontaneous and unexpected.
Okay, we will go back and we will delineate between what you've done and channeling, and then launch into what you know about Nostradamus.
Okay, hold that thought.
Okay, yeah, that's right. And then, of course, what Nostradamus knows about what's coming. It is going to be a wild year. It's going to be a wild millennium. I think there's no question about that. I mean, we're already in it. I call it a quickening. It's just a word happening all around us. I'm Mark Bell from the high desert. This is Greenland. Oh, very good. Once again, here I am with Dolores Canada is my guest. She is well known internationally for her work with regressive hypnosis into viral lives, and one of them involves square into Nostradamus, and we're about to enter that territory. Dolores, if I might, let me ask you this. Let me tell you this first of all. I've got a sister who lives up in Berkeley, California.
Yeah.
And she channels.
Oh, okay.
Now, I must tell you, as I have said over the air for many years, I don't necessarily doubt that there may be some real channeling, but I am highly skeptical because I think there is too much room for fraud.
Oh, yes, I agree with you there because I've been in on a lot of channeling sessions, and I think sometimes they don't say anything.
Right,
There isn't any information there at all.
So the question is, how do you differentiate channeling from what you have done?
Okay, there is a big difference. There's one thing people are saying that what I've done with Nostradamus, there isn't even a name for it. They said they can't call it channeling, can't really call it hypnosis because it seems to have gone beyond hypnosis. I would like to call it time travel. Because we were able to establish direct contact with the living Nostradamus, not his spirit or ghost. The living Nostradamus, while he is living in France in the 1500s, while he's writing on trains. So there's something to do here with the time lapse, and there's nothing to do with channeling because they said it's not what's heard. Very hard to explain. But whenever he was communicating with us, he said, I want to be very emphatic that you are not speaking to the dead. I'm not a spirit floating around out here. I'm alive.
Now, alive in the physical sense.
In the physical sense, yes. It is though we are really in his life as though making a telephone call to him while he is living. Because if in the books I go into many times where his wife would come knocking at the door and say, I'm sorry, I have to leave. Supper on the table. One time they brought a child to him that's been hurt. Carriage outside the house.
No, I understand. Let me stop you. Are you saying then that you are communicating with the present incarnation of Nostradamus?
That's what makes it different and strange, and there's no way that it can be explained. But see, if that is true, that brings up the metaphysical theory of simultaneous time. That there is no time, it's all occurring at once.
Indeed.
Which is also very hard to explain. They always tell my lecturers to explain what you mean. I can't explain it any better than that, except that it's all occurring at once. Well, emphatic, he didn't want to know his own future, he didn't want to know how to die.
I've heard it expressed that time was invented so everything doesn't happen at once. At any rate, how long have you been in such communication?
Okay, that was a very strange story. If I can tell you what happened, incidentally, they have an option on it to turn it into a TV movie or a TV series or something because they said they've never been told a very unusual, strange story. But if they do it, I'd like to be involved to make sure it's told accurately and not blown out of proportion.
Good luck.
And that's the thing, because this doesn't mean any fiction writer. It is strange enough in its own right. I'll leave it alone. Okay, let me explain what happened, because I still have problems myself believing what happened. It occurred in 1986, And as I said, I was a past life regressionist, past life therapy. And I was working with a woman who just wanted to go back into a past life. She had one. She didn't have any problems or anything. Just out of curiosity. She didn't know anything about metaphysics. Later we found out she didn't even know who Nostradamus was. I called her a normal woman, but she had 10 children, and she was working 2 jobs to try to take care of the 6 men. So this is the kind of person you could say, well, let's find time here to think of a whole world.
Right.
Now, I've been accused of all kinds of things.
I'm sure.
But anyway, we had the session, and she went back into hundreds of France, where she was a student of Nostradamus, a male student. And I thought at the time, well, you know, maybe I could get some interesting information. I'm always looking for information. What could she tell me about this great man? And I was asking her questions about that. That's where everything got very strange. Because suddenly she said, and if there's anyone out there listening who is a past life therapist, they will know this never happens when you're doing past life therapy. The person you are communicating with is the only one that is aware of you.
Right.
No one can really know what was going on. But if it's true that he was such a great psychic, maybe he was able to pick up on something that was unusual. But anyway, he said he wants to sleep. And then became a 3-way conversation. She was telling me what he was saying. And then she was repeating what I was saying. So she was in the middle, relaying it back and forth. And what he said was, he had been looking for a link to the future because he could see that his prophecies were not being correctly interpreted.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And the time was coming that they were going to come through with urgency. He said he had an assignment for me. He said, I want you to get the book. I can see in your time period there is a book that has the French and the English of the quatrain. And he said, I want you to read them to me. And I will explain them to you, symbol by symbol, anagram by anagram, and tell you in what part of history it belongs.
There are many in the audience who will not even understand what they're hearing when we talk of Nostradamus. He was, of course, a prophet, and he wrote his predictions in quatrains, which are somewhat difficult to read and understand, and they were intentionally done in that manner.
Yes, you're very convoluted, is what I call them.
So that they would not attach him to a cross and burn him state, which they were doing to people at that sort of that time.
Now, he lived at the time of the Inquisition.
Yeah.
And it was very dangerous to do this.
Very dangerous.
That's why he devised code. And when this happened, I didn't even know what a quatrain was. Quatrain is a 4-line poem. And in the case of Nostradamus, it's a 4-line prophecy or puzzle. And he wrote almost 1,000 of these that have come down to our time.
1,000?
Almost 1,000. He told me later he actually wrote 1,500 of them, but only just a little under 1,000 have survived in our time.
Objectively, with what we know of the 1,000 that he did write, objectively, how many have come true?
Oh, I would rather say maybe half or more, because if I work with him, this is the first time in history all of these have been interpreted and translated and put into their proper little niche. It has never been done before. All the other books will explain what the words mean, because he has strange words as well as symbols and this is in your collection. There are many books that will tell you what the words mean, but not what the prophecies. And when people are finished, well, I do want to finish with this girl because it was very interesting what happened when she woke up. But anyway, all this is on my computer, and the computer's put the entire thing together with so much information. But he told me he wanted to get the book and read it to him, and he would be put into everyday language. And well, naturally, this was quite astounding. I was thinking, what's going on here? So when the woman woke up and I told her what she had said, she was so frightened she moved to Alaska. You can't say she started, but you can say I started. But before she left, we had time for one more session. I think she was doing it to appease me more than anything else.
Does she remain now in Alaska?
Oh, she comes back and forth from time to time. She was originally from there, and I think she wanted to go back, but this kind of hurried her up a little.
Well, we are heard in every city in the state of Alaska. She was likely listening to you.
Very likely. But before she left, we had one session, and she was in the process of moving and everything. It was not the ideal situation. But during the session, he came through again, and he said, I still want you to do this work. I said, I can't, she's moving away. He said, that doesn't matter. Now that we have made this connection, you will never lose me. I will come through anybody you work with. And he gave me just the instructions, how to locate him, like to give you a telephone number, and also tests performed to make sure I was actually.
Are these parameters that you keep to yourself?
Yes, they are, because really, he's a very private person. I got to know him very well. He has a temper. I feel like I'm a student with a very stern teacher, the way I feel. And he would get very angry at me. I found out he was a definite male chauvinist, but he is still very busy. And it turned out that I was actually interfering in his time. I was told that what I thought took place in an hour session actually took up 6 hours in his class. So here again, we're into a time portion of time.
Well, Hayes calls it time compression.
Well, you know, if I use work with UFOs, I have what I call time condensation, which is probably the same thing.
Probably, yes.
But the idea was that, go in there.
Well, that 6 hours on his end, 1 hour on ours.
So for that reason, I try not to bother him unless it's something important. There's been television shows that wanted me to prove it, you know, and I've done it on the air, but taking someone just out of his camera through, show it can be done.
I mean, and putting them under and
yeah, and yeah, we have done this on the air. I've done it for different shows and things. But that's not the idea. You don't want to turn this into something like that.
No, not a circus.
No, I've got a great respect for the man, so I don't tell anyone how I do it, although there are a lot of them want to find out.
I'm sure.
And in the book, I do mention the test that I performed with all the people I worked with. Incidentally, before it was over, there had been 12 different people involved. All the stories told in the 3 volumes. That's why it took 3 volumes. It took so many twists and turns. But each one was able to locate the same man in the same room and continuing with the same story. You would say, well, I've been waiting for you. Can we get started?
Yes, that in itself is, and I assume you retain tapes of all of this.
Oh, yes, I've got all the tapes. And all the transcriptions.
Well, that itself would seem to be proof. I mean, if you are able to establish contact with the very same person again and again and again over
the other people don't even know what has been done before. They have no access to it. But yet they continue with the same scenario, the same story.
Remarkable. Remarkable. Well, obviously, where we are headed, you said that Nostradamus wished to make clear in good, plain English is what we're portraying, his predictions.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you, Dolores, you probably are not aware. I have written a book since we're about to launch into this myself.
Okay.
I've been doing talk radio for about, in this incarnation, for about 13 years, this program. Or the one I do about it. And I began to notice over the last several years, Dolores, an acceleration in all areas of human events, socially, politically, economically, environmentally, you name it. I began to notice that things were occurring at a faster and faster and faster pace.
Oh, I believe it.
And I would begin to talk to my listeners about this, and many would call in, and they would say, no, Art, it just seems that way because we have mass communications, because we hear about things instantly. So I thought, well, I got so fed up with it that I wrote a book called The Quickening, which actually documents that things are accelerating at an exponential pace. And I believe we are headed to, I'm not a prophet, Dolores, but we are headed towards some kind of event or series of events. And so I documented that much, but I have certainly never spoken with Nostradamus, and so now we are headed for, you agree then?
Oh, yes, I
That
do.
premise.
And he even backed that up because he said, the main thing we have to do is get through the decade of the 90s. He said there will be more tremendous events happening during the decade of the 90s than ever in the history of man before. But he said you chose to live in this time and you could work all more time by living in this time, one life, and you could normally live 10. You could see that things are speeded up. It would have to be. And we have so many things coming at us. We could work on one problem at a time, but now it's all coming at us all at once.
1997, for me, personally, has been the best and worst year of my entire life. Both, the Lord's both. And I believe that for the world, for the nation, it is the best and worst of times.
Yes.
And from this point, I guess we're going to begin to move forward, and I guess you can give us the highlights, can't you?
Yes, well, one thing he said he was giving us, a lot of people don't like the prophecies because they say that they are doom and gloom.
Right.
He said he was giving us the worst case scenario. What would happen if mankind didn't do something to stop these things? Or to shake them up, was going to have to give them the worst. And if I tell you the most horrible thing mankind can do to himself, is do something to stop it. That was the whole purpose of the communication, was to tell us what was going to happen so we could do something about it.
All right, then when we return after the bottom of the hour, what I would like you to do, if you're willing, is to give us sort of a summary of what the worst case scenario is.
Okay.
And I hate to be negative myself, but as I watch the direction of mankind right now, I don't think we're yet headed in a direction that is going to have us living out the best of the possibilities. Not yet.
He said we have to get to the worst. He calls it the time of trouble. The time of trouble first, then you go into solving it.
The time of troubles. All right, well, that's what's coming next, folks, after the break here at the